Welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, the show designed to help make middle age your prime time of life by defying the notion that once you reach 40, 50, or even 60 years old, your crowning achievements are all behind you. Regardless of whether you're just approaching 40 or firmly entrenched in your middle years, it's time to launch your very own personal journey toward a joyful and purpose-filled second half of life. Each week, host Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, will discuss the challenges common to middle age and help guide you to a brighter tomorrow. Now, here's Roy.
Well, hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age. As we launch a new year, let me begin by asking you two questions. Do you want to live your life fully and to have the greatest positive impact that you can? Indeed, doesn't that prospect sound far more appealing than just getting through the remainder of your life with no particular point or purpose? And I'm quite certain, like me, you will answer both of these questions in the affirmative. The problem for so many of us, we want our lives to have meaning, but we're not sure just where to start. And we may not even fully understand what it means to live a life of meaning, and we certainly could use some tips on how to bring more meaning into our lives. And today I have the perfect guest to help in our search for a meaningful life. And my guest is author and philosopher Bob Lichtenbert PhD, who has compiled more than 13,000 pieces of advice on how to make meaning, as in positive impact, on the quality of life for you and for others around you. And Professor Bob wrote down dozens of these life-changing ideas on index cards that he carried around in his shirt pocket for more than 30 years. And we're not going to discuss all 13,000 tips on today's program, but I'm going to ask Bob what it means to have a life of meaning and to share a few of his most essential tips. And here are Professor Bob Lichtenberg's background and qualifications. He has a master's and PhD degrees from Tulane University in New Orleans and has taught philosophy for over 40 years at various colleges. He published 62 issues of The Meaning of Life, a frequently quoted, highly praised journal that at one time was the third largest philosophical journal in the U.S. He currently reviews plays and has reviewed and written about all the arts in different publications. And he leads a monthly discussion group for 27 years on making meaning and the philosophy of daily life, currently held at his home in Chicago, free and open to the public. And he's author of several books, including his latest that we'll preview today, published last July, Tips for Making Meaning. And hello, Professor Bob, and welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age.
Thank you, Roy. Good to be here. Glad to be here.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Please give us your definition for the term meaning. Why do we need to make more of it for others and for ourselves?
That's a great starting point, as always, to define terms, especially ones that are as ambiguous as meaning, as I myself have used that term in 80 different senses in my writings. I wrote them down. But to get to your question, I define meaning as having a positive impact. Meaning can be negative, but we don't usually use that word in that sense, and I don't use it in that sense myself.
No, we
either.
Certainly don't want to make negative meaning for others or for ourselves.
No, although meaning can be that. There's plenty of meaninglessness in the world. For example, death.
Yeah.
Those are very hard to deal with, but. I'm talking most about positive meaning, having a good impact. That's how I define it. And having good relationships, good effects, doing the most good you can with your little life.
Well, this was very interesting to me. When did you first become inspired to study and write about making meaning? I know it was shortly after the birth of your son.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of a dramatic time. I had just been let go by a major university, who I won't name, and I was feeling kind of down about that, and I looked at my young son and decided that I just wanted to have my life have meaning for him and for my family and for others. That's what I wanted. And the word caught on. I thought that's a word that hadn't been used much and could use much development. Yeah. So that's when I began at that dramatic moment to study meaning.
In a prior book, Making Meaning, you present 8 main sources of meaning for our lives. Can you run through these sources? I thought they were very good.
Yes, surely I'd be glad to. The first one is having good quality relationships to other people. That's most likely to produce happiness if you could find that. But we're at the mercy of other people there. I'm going to have to keep these brief. The second source of meaning is to have a sense of community with other people, a caring group in which you're active and involved. The next source of meaning is have meaningful dialogue or discussion or talk, not just trivia or chit-chat.
Yeah.
But talk about ideas, not abstract or intellectual ones, but intelligent ones. Fourth source of meaning, a very important one, is to find fulfilling work, because that's where we're going to use most of our energy and time.
I can certainly second that. I had a few jobs that I just despised, and it impacted my whole life. I couldn't really enjoy life when I wasn't enjoying what I was doing for a living. But
it's a big part of our lives. So it's a big source of making meaning. Hopefully we can find fulfilling work. But it's very difficult. Most jobs are just things that need to be done. And that's not fulfilling. Next source of meaning, number 5, is to search for intangible ideas. These are things that are abstract that you cannot touch. But they could have a lot of meaning. For example, the example I'll give is love. To know what love is. and other ideas too are justice and goodness, truth, and big ideas like that. Very difficult, to be sure, but it could be a big source of meaning if you could sink your teeth into them. And then, I believe it's the 6th one, source of meaning is to seek God and seek, His, whether there is a God or not, to construct your own arguments for God. Because a lot of time would be involved there if the Western religions are true. They say we'll live forever in happiness with God. But we need to know whether this is a true intangible idea or not, and think about the arguments or proofs, evidence for God. The main one would be that there has to be a creator of the universe. Even the Big Bang started only at a definite time, 13.7 billion years ago. But still, before that, there was nothing. So that's the creator argument is still a pretty strong argument for God's existence. Then the
last one is probably the least significant, but for many people, maybe the most significant, unfortunately. And what's that? It's art, finding meaning in art.
You're right. It should be important, but for a lot of people, it's too much. For them, that's why I put it last. But really, art is nothing but the expression of emotions, and that's all art does. It expresses profound feelings of happiness and joy.
Well, no, I was thinking of material possession was the one I was thinking of. So many people cover.
I did skip that, material possessions. I'm sorry about that. Material possessions is definitely a source of meaning because you need them to survive, but they don't lead to our prosperity. And they're rather short-lived, too. People find they're happy when they buy something major, but they're only happy for a short...
your neighbor buys a more expensive car, and then you have to go out and...
that makes them happy, but it's only for a short period of time. It doesn't last, and then they're looking for something else to buy. and to give them meaning, but it's never much meaning in the material realm. That's why the intangible realm.
To live a joyful and meaningful life, do we need satisfaction in all 8 sources of meaning? For example,
no.
Can your life have meaning if you have great relationships and a strong sense of community, even though you don't like your job and maybe don't have a lot of material possessions? We don't need all 8, or
No, you don't need all 8. It'd be better if you have all 8, of course, but you don't have to have all 8. You could have unfulfilling work, but still get all the other sources of meaning when you're not at work. And that would be a highly meaningful life.
It's kind of hard to do if you have to work 50 hours a week. But
and commute a lot.
Yeah,
as many of us do.
Well, let's get down to where the rubber meets the road. Can you please give us 3 or 4 tips from your most recent book on how to bring the most meaning into our daily lives? Give us a couple tips there.
Sure, I'd be glad to. I think the simplest and biggest one is to simply to connect with something greater than yourself, whether it's another person or a social cause. Or the biggest of them all would be to connect with God, but that's very hard to do. Another tip is to try and do as much as you can at one time. Like, for example, when I walk my dog, I read a book, and my dog runs free. And I also pick up
hopefully you
litter.
Don't walk into the traffic. When you're reading.
Well, the dog knows better, and so do I. Even though I'm reading a book, and you get more living in that way. I've gotten so much done.
That's an interesting thought. You're good at multitasking, in other words.
I'm getting exercise too, and so is the dog.
Yeah, that's true. 4 things at once: reading, exercise for the dog, and I guess. Don't know what the 4th one is.
Yeah, so you get a lot of meaning out of multitasking if you could handle it more. And another tip is to do good for others, because when you do that, they get meaning. If you do something for them, but that gives you meaning because you made them happy.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how good you feel when you really do something for somebody else? Just to their benefit, not necessarily to you.
It increases your own meaning, but mostly you're making meaning for others. But there's a side effect that your life has more meaning. It has more positive effect because you did good for others. So that's another tip. Would you like some more?
Yeah, maybe.
I got 1,300 of them, more than that. I would stress making meaning every moment you can.
Yeah.
Because life is so short and it goes so fast. A big tip is to know the laws of logic. There are laws of logic, and they do tell us how to think, and they can guide our thinking. And they can guide our thinking and test our thinking for all of it, all our thinking. Even our opinions can be evaluated and judged.
I think a lot of the opinions thrown around today and
most of what we talk about is we don't talk about facts. Facts are boring. We all know the facts. Who cares about them? But
the facts are very different depending on which news channel you tune into.
Well, they have different perspectives.
They're interpreted differently.
But our opinions can be judged and evaluated by logic. So it's very meaningful if you know logic, but there's practically no there's no knowledge of logic in our society.
Yeah,
we have almost none. I don't see it anywhere in the public.
Where do we go to find these laws of logic so that we can evaluate opinion against those and see if it makes any sense or not?
Yeah. So that's an important tip. Because it involves thinking. However, humans think they're rational animals, and we are, and we do have the ability to understand abstract ideas like God somewhat.
Yeah.
But I think a very helpful tip is to regard humans as basically emotional animals.
Yeah.
And they live primarily on the basis of their feelings because they're not very good with ideas. The mind is very limited in that respect. We cannot know many ideas at a time.
Yeah, that's an example of how emotional human beings are. 46 people were killed in those Iranian demonstrations the other day as they stampeded, I don't know where, but can you believe that anyone would be so emotional that they would actually kill somebody else, crushing each other, living on emotions?
Yeah, and that's where humans live. We live mostly on emotions, on that basis of our feelings. What we feel is right and good, we do that. We follow that. We're not very good at thinking of abstract ideas. Although we do have some capacity for that. So always appeal to a person's emotions, and the will is very strong in humans too.
Yeah. Well, one of your 8 sources of meaning is seeking God, certainly an essential one. But what if you're not a member of a mainline religion? Perhaps you're an agnostic, even an atheist. Please explain how you can connect to something greater than yourself if you don't believe in a supreme being active in human affairs.
If you don't believe in God, you can connect to other people. You could have good quality relationships, friendships involving discussing ideas, not abstractions.
No, it's certainly difficult to try to depend solely upon yourself for guidance and ideals. So I know I believe in a God, but even if you don't, you need something other than just yourself.
Oh, yeah, you'll certainly get more meaning the bigger the object that you could relate to is.
Yeah.
You know, the bigger it is, the more meaning you can give.
The negative indication that people, when they ask if there is a God, they say, well, the universe is so vast, how can there be a God? And also, why is there so much evil in the world?
Those are difficult questions, very difficult. But we got to think about them all our lives.
Yeah.
They have more meaning using logic and some knowledge, and we can get a lot of meaning that way.
Yeah, it's easier if you believe in an afterlife, because then somebody that suffers tremendously in this life still has the prospect of eternity in something better. So that's one way to get around it, I guess. And in terms of the size of the universe, it's really beyond the human grasp to imagine a God over the entire universe, or even a universe that never ends. I know.
Yeah, and science tells us that the universe is expanding. It's getting bigger. Although the rate is slowing down for some reason that we don't have a clue. Yeah. But the universe is expanding, but that raises the question: what is it expanding into?
Yeah, that's what I always wondered. What's the other
empty
side
space?
Of the universe?
But it is empty space. That's the universe. Most of it is empty space.
Yeah. Well, okay.
So that's a real difficult question. It's fun to think about. One will never understand, I'm sure. Our intellects are just too puny to understand that.
Let's come back down to earth and say I'm 48 years old and I've basically been running my life on empty. In the early 20s, I may have had dreams of making a real difference in the world, but I've long since faded away through the daily pressures of earning a living and raising 3 children. My kids are teenagers now, and they all know more than I do, they think, and they no longer pay much attention to my wife and my spouse and me. And at work, I have reached a plateau far short of where I thought I'd be at this age. And basically, I'm taking it day to day, waiting for retirement that is still about 17 years away. And this isn't really me, by the way. This is an assumption. And I'd like to bring meaning back into my life and have a positive impact on the lives of my spouse and kids and on others, but I don't have the foggiest notion of how and where do I start.
Oh, that is a very complicated question and problem. And it takes me many pages in my first book to answer that question.
I guess they start by reading your book then, right?
Oh, sure. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. But basically, I would try to answer it here by saying you should try and do as much as you can to show that you love them. And love is giving to others. But you're not expecting anything in return. That's the highest form of love.
Yeah.
Aim for that, strive for that, give to others. Give them what they need, not what they want. Big difference there. As much as you can determine it, which is not easy, certainly. That's why I said it took me many pages to answer that question. And I hate to say this, but it's going to be different in every case. You know, I can't really make that specific. It all depends on the other person and what they like, and so what they truly need. And,
well, tell us a little bit about your 2019 book, your latest tips for making meaning. For whom is this written, and what's the most important message you'd like readers to take away from it?
Well, it's written for everyone, but mostly, I hope everyone, but I don't think it will appeal to people who haven't had college education.
Yeah.
You need
to have
that.
You professional psychologists or philosophers. We can all
no, not for them. No, they're off in the clouds, most of them. They're in the realm of academia. They're pressured by their colleges to be that way, which is not good. I'm sorry, what was your question? I got away from
Should the book be read along with your outstanding 2016 book, Making Meaning, Seeking the Most Meaningful Life? It seems like that covers the basic definitions and gets you started, and then the tips for making meaning would provide that specific knowledge you would need to find that meaning. Do you suggest reading those two books together?
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah. Read them together if you can. It's a lot of reading. There's over 200 pages. Making Meaning is the first book to develop that idea, which I think is the greatest idea. What could be more important than the significance or the effects of something, the impact of something?
Yeah.
I think it's our greatest idea, but it's the least developed one because it is ambiguous and vague. But I'm trying to define it right at the start, pin it down, fully develop all aspects of it.
I've reviewed it on Amazon. It looks like it does that very well. But where's the preferred location to preview and purchase either or both of your books? I guess Amazon is. I know it's on Amazon, both of them.
Yeah, and Barnes and Nobles, you can get on that too. But the book does develop that idea and apply it. But I realized, after developing it fully, that a lot of people have a difficult time reading much of substance. And so I wrote a much abridged version called Making More Meaning. And that's when I got it down to 57 pages. That's when I just got to the point of what is meaning and how to make it. I recommend those books to your listeners.
Where do you find that?
That book is only 57 pages long. To develop the idea fully, it was over 200. That's a lot of reading. Some of it's pretty difficult.
How do I get hold of Making More Meaning, the 57-page book? Where do people go for that?
Yeah, that's right to the point. It's not the full development as Making Meaning was of the concept of making meaning, I abridged it quite a bit. So, so it's much less time consuming for people to read, which is hard, and we don't have time. We're always busy.
No. There isn't much time for philosophers anymore. We're all too busy getting quick feedback on Twitter and finding all the answers there. Where do you go to get that 57-page book?
Me would be best, but most people don't. They aren't near me. So, as you mentioned, Amazon.com.
Okay.
Or go to Bob Lichtenbert. Google that on your computer, and you'll find a lot of places where you could get it. I recommend Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. Get it at both of those.
Okay, that's fine. Well, let's conclude. I'd like to conclude. Here's a great question for you to explore as we begin a new year. What is meaning? Why do I need to make more of it for others and for myself? And how can I do so? And my guest, Professor Bob Lichtenbert, has been on a mission for 30-some years to convince others that meaning is our greatest, broadest, and most helpful idea. And believe me, a former sleepwalker through life, once you uncover your life's true meaning, it will make all the difference in the world. And when you have meaning and purpose in your life, you are much less likely to let roadblocks kill your resolve and stop you from doing something worthwhile and meaningful in your life. And Bob, in one of his books, quotes German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who says, anyone who has a why to live can endure almost anyhow. And I love that statement. And the search for meaning is, in fact, a search for grounding, which can steer you on a path of joy, purpose, and fulfillment for the rest of your life. And I highly recommend you preview Professor Bob Lichtenbert's latest books, Making Meaning, and Tips for Making Meaning. And what's the name of that 57-page book?
Making More Meaning.
Okay, just add a more. You'll have all three
of
them to look at.
Making More Meaning, yes.
And you'll find them.
Which is what we do. We all have meaning, but the ideal is to try to make more of it. But so many people are complacent. They think they have enough meaning. They have enough ideas. They think their ideas are right, and they get very set in their thinking. And aren't really looking for anything else because they think they know what the best that they can. But really, there's a lot more that we need to know about meaning and how to make it. You just got to want to do it, I think, is the main thing, or feel that you want to do it. And making meaning, Roy, is something that will definitely is the thing. If you make meaning in your life and make more meaning in your life, then you will certainly have a happy life. And that's what most of us want to feel. We want to feel happy in our lives. And
also bring joy to those around us. That nihilism and
and joy is a bit strong, but
it's not going to cut it.
It would be difficult to make a lot of joy, but for others. But we can help to make lives more meaningful by being friendly and helpful and considerate, stuff like that. It's all in my books in much detail. But I hope it's clear because I revised it many times. Revised my books, made them clearer and simpler because it's not an easy subject, not an easy topic. It's the hardest thing in life.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Bob, for today's introductory lesson in meaningsology. It's a new study. Have time to talk about it further. We could talk all day and all night on the subject of meaning.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks to Professor Bob Lichtenbert for his fascinating discussion of finding meaning in our lives. And let's end today's program with some good news. I know all you Generation Xers out there, you're now all middle-aged, 40 to 55, according to the experts. And according to an article by Andrea Peterson in the January 13, 2020 Wall Street Journal, you Gen Xers are redefining the rules of midlife renewal. and forget the old trappings of midlife crisis and welcome to the virtuous new midlife crisis. Many people facing middle age don't want to blow up their lives, just upgrade them, according to studies. And compared to earlier generation, people at midlife today, you folks 40 to 55 or whatever, are less likely to feel like you've missed out on having fun. Instead, you're often more worried about staying healthy enough to see your children graduate high school. Doctors, health resorts, meditation teachers, and adventure travel companies say they are seeing growing numbers of people in their 40s and early 50s who are seeking to change their lives after having a midlife epiphany, and the virtuoso network of travel agencies has seen an uptick in people marking midlife with trips to remote or physically challenging destinations like Antarctica or the Appalachian Trail. And Butterfield and Robinson, an operator of high-end biking and hiking trips, says that in the past 5 years, it's seen a 20% increase in bookings by Gen Xers celebrating birthdays or other special events. And there is a growing awareness of how midlife influences, or how lifestyle, I should say, influences health that is shaping many midlifers' decisions, doctors say. That's certainly a good thing. More research has shown how diet and exercise, we talk about this all the time, how they can play a role in the prevention of diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and even dementia, information that may be spurring middle-aged patients to turbocharge efforts to improve their health, says Robert McLean, president of the American College of Physicians. And Canyon Ranch, which operates destination spas and other preventative health care services, says it is seeing more midlife clients who are beginning to feel the signs of aging. There's the general sense that I can't get away with what I used to get away with, or it's the personal wake-up call. I've had some of those myself. The cholesterol reading, the high blood pressure, the being overweight, says Jim Eastburn, Canyon Ranch's corporate director of transformational wellness. Middle-aged guests also have a greater sense of urgency around mindfulness, he says. In response to demand, the company has added several new spiritual wellness services in the last couple of years, including one titled Cultivating a Life of Purpose. Sounds a lot like Dr. Lichtenbert's work, doesn't it? A.J. Snyder can pinpoint the exact moment his virtuous midlife crisis began. It was 2 years ago when he was 46, and he was attending the funeral of a high school classmate in his hometown of Buffalo, New York. When somebody you know well who is your age passes away, you get pretty introspective, said Mr. Snyder, an executive vice president of Wheaton Van Lines in Indianapolis. He stopped eating most carbohydrates and refined sugar. He practiced intermittent fasting, only eating for a limited number of hours each day, and he took up running. He's lost 42 pounds and no longer has to take Lipitor, he says. Now Mr. Snyder looks forward to celebrating his daughter's high school graduation by climbing a mountain or going skiing or something like that, he said. Midlife is the age when most people kind of sit back and say, well, now that I'm all grown up, what do I really want to be, says Gerald Lee Shapiro, a professor of counseling psychology at Santa Clara University in California. People begin to rack up losses of their parents' professional dreams, the ability to fit into their skinny jeans, and health problems can emerge, and you can become more aware that time is limited. This midlife reevaluation is healthy and normal, Dr. Shapiro says, and I'll certainly second that. It becomes a full-on crisis only when people don't deal with the rebalancing very well or feel like they can't make things better and that they're destined to a deterioration the rest of their lives. Then it becomes a crisis. On her 50th birthday, Kai Jackson started a life bucket list. Not a bad idea. take a woodworking class, learn a good joke, read every book that won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and run marathons in all 50 states are among the entries. That last one's a little harder than reading those books, isn't it? Well, she's currently logged races in 32 states, and she keeps a list on her phone and checks it regularly. I try to really stay focused on the goals, says Miss Jackson, now 51, and a stay-at-home mom in Austin, Texas. Ms. Jackson says her experience volunteering at a nursing home and working with seniors with dementia has given her a sense of urgency. It gives me some perspective that there is no guarantee of how we are going to end up or when it is going to happen. I really think time is short, she says. And her midlife goals have to fit into her life as a busy married mom with 2 children. We're going to talk about dealing with motherhood and having a full life next week with our guest. She has 2 children, ages 13 and 14. She says, I can't leave my husband, not logistically, she jokes. I can't go out and buy a 2-seater car because I have to drive kids around. The biggest goal on Ms. Jackson's list is to hike the entire 2,190-mile Appalachian Trail, something she plans to do when her younger child graduates from high school, and she's already picked out her trail name. The monikers hikers choose for themselves, Sweetwater. Well, go for it, Sweetwater. I hope you make the whole 2,190 miles. And so would you like some assistance in your own re-examination and reviving your life at midstream? Well, may I suggest my own book, A Midlife Challenge Wake Up by Roy C. Richards. It's a comprehensive roadmap with 21 self-help participation exercises and your own pre-launch checklist in the book's final chapter. And you'll find my book both in ebook form and printed form on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, or through our website, middleagerenewal.com. And many folks from 40 on up have told me that my book is extremely helpful as a guidebook to midlife renewal. And that's our program for today. Join us again next week when we explain why. Once again, we explain why middle age can be your best age.
You've been listening to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age, hosted by Roy Richards, an expert on midlife renewal and author of both A Midlife Challenge, Wake Up, and Wake Up, Captain and Crew, Restart Your Engines. You can learn more about Roy and his Middle Age Renewal Training System by visiting his website, middleagerenewal.com.